The University of Huddersfield, inspiring tomorrow's professionals.
The second workshop session, and we will be presented in a historic composition environment that has been used to use the seminar, create a seminar composition Stria and John Chowning, and this is presented by Michael Clarke, Frédéric Dufeu, and
Thank you very much. Peter Manning isn't here this afternoon, so I'm going to give a brief introduction to what we're doing and the context of what we're doing, and we want to save most of the time for Frédéric to give a demo of some of the software. I think the sort of things we're doing are in some ways rather different from I think a lot of the papers that have been given today. On the other hand, I think some interesting connections there perhaps, which I hope might provoke some useful discussion afterwards. So what we want to present is one of our case studies from a larger project called TACEM. TACEM stands for Technology and Creativity in Electroacoustic Music. And if you type in TACEM, T-A-C-E-M, into Google, I think you usually come top of the search or very near the top if you want to find out more about this, and a video demo of some of the other work we've been doing. So this has been a 30-month AHRC-funded project involving three of us, Frédéric, myself here in Huddersfield, and then Peter Manning from Durham. And we've been looking at how technological innovation in electroacoustic music has enabled composers to work creatively in new ways, in the way they produce their works. And so what we're going to look at today is just one of those case studies, which is based around John Chowning's work Stria from 1977. In a moment, I'll just give you a context to how we're thinking about these works, but before we do, in case any of you are not familiar with this work, we'll play just a short extract. It is a very slow-moving, evolving piece, so it's quite difficult to play a short extract, but given time, I want to save a lot of time for the demo, we'll perhaps just play a couple of minutes of it to give you an idea of the sound of it. Okay, so you can hear more extracts from the work as we talk about it, and it's an explanation of what the software means and the graphics you can see there. But just to give you some background to this project and our thinking behind it, I suppose one of the basic questions we're asking is, how do you study computer music? The pieces we're studying are all pieces generated by computer. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're algorithmic pieces, but they are generated using software. And we've got pieces not only by John Chowning, but by people like Francis Domont, Barry Truax, and Natasha Barrett, Court Lippy, Jonathan Harvey, and who have I missed? Trevor Wish, I put this down, so I think I might not have got 8, but I've got most of them in there now. Philip Mallory, I think I missed. So a wide range of different approaches to computer music. How do you study this, and how do you study the technologies that produced it? Now, a key belief behind what we're doing is that it doesn't make sense, or you don't get as much out of it, if you simply study it in the abstract, in theory. Both for our research and for the way we communicate our research, we think it's actually important to engage with the music itself as sound, to play with it, to manipulate it, so as to learn more about it. And likewise with the technology, rather than simply giving a list of technical data or verbal descriptions of it, we want to engage with that technology ourselves, and then we want our readers to be able to engage with it as well. And so what we're doing is to make simulations of the software that was used, and to work with that ourselves to understand more about how it worked, about the potential it offered to different composers, the restrictions that they faced, the choices they had, and then also, as I say, to present that to our audience for our research, so that the people who are using our software can work with it. It also means that the end results of our research are not simply a text in a book. There will be a book as part of it, but not simply a text with our findings, our finished results. That we do give suggestions of what we think, but we're also giving people tools to play with, so it's open-ended in a sense. It goes beyond the things that we're presenting to our readers. We're providing resources to allow our readers to explore the piece further for themselves. So in the case of John Chowning's Stria, this is just one of our 8 case studies, and they're all different. We've had to approach them differently according to the nature of the music. What we're doing here is looking at it at several different levels. On the one hand, we're looking at the finished work, as you see here, and we're analysing that and taking it apart and seeing what its components are and how it's structured. But we're also looking at the synthesis algorithms used to generate the piece. In this case, of course, for John Chowning, it's the FM synthesis, for which he's so famous. And then going beyond that, we're also looking at the algorithms that he used to generate the piece itself. And he did this writing in SAIL, the Stanford Artificial Intelligence language. So we've recreated all those steps, the synthesis, the artificial intelligence algorithm, and the finished sound, all within Max, so that it's all now in real time actually, and it's all done in one unified system. Whereas when he was working, he wrote his SAIL algorithm, he generated the outputs from that, he fed that into Music 10 to generate the sound, and so on. And he had to wait long times for the results to come out. We've amalgamated all that into one process, and we can adapt things and instantaneously hear the results. Our software then allows people to dig into the piece, to find out how it's structured, but also to play with the methods he used to create it. We're simulating the creative environment that the composer used as a means of investigating the music and the way it was produced. We'll perhaps come on to this a bit later, but I think there's some interesting comparisons with what Eduardo was saying a little while ago. Very definitely, John Chowning was taking the outputs from his software, from his SAIL algorithms, and using them directly without any modification to produce the sounds. He wasn't adapting them later, but he was modifying the SAIL algorithm over and over again until he got the results that he wanted. You'll see in a minute, I think Frédéric will show, one of the resources we've got is some video we took from 3 days of working with John Chowning at Stanford, asking him about this, and he explained very much how he went through this iterative process of trying things out, modifying the software, and so on. Another difference, perhaps, from some of the things that have been talked about today is that although he's using this SAIL language, everything in his software is determinate. Nothing is aleatoric or chance-oriented. The algorithms would produce the same result every time if you gave them the same input. So that's another interesting comparison. So I hope that gives you some context of this. If you're interested in knowing more about it, look at our website, and at the moment you can find some information and you can find a demo video. In the future, all the software will be freely available there. There will be a book to accompany all this to explain it, and that we're still in negotiations about a book contract for that, and that will be something people have to buy, but the software will be free. So if you're interested in this, do keep track of that website. So for the rest of the time, I'll hand over to Frédéric, who will explain, I think, an overview of what the software can do, and then particularly look at the SAIL software.
Thanks, Michael. Good afternoon. So, this first interactive role example of the software, as you have seen already, presents Stria as a whole, and the idea of the whole process that Michael just described is to break down work into more simple elements. So as you can see on the screen, there are about 250 elements, and their color correspond to their spatialization position. And so That's it. So if I just instead of playing this as I just did a couple of minutes ago, I can just click on any object and see what it is for itself. That's it. So just to give you a clear idea that despite Stria being possibly heard as a kind of continuous flux, in fact it is constituted by quite clearly defined objects that in the end merge together in this process. So here, for instance, you've got quite a lot of features that I won't go through now today, but you can sort the data according to several parameters. So one important thing to bear in mind to understand the way this work has been created is that there is the algorithm inside, so the same algorithm that generated the several elements together, between what we call events. And there is the DSP, the synthesis side, so that's basically what you can see here in the set of parameter names, so duration, attack detail, carrier frequency, modulator frequency, and so on. So it's quite all simple in terms of synthesis, but I can select any of these parameters to sort this data visually. So for instance, if I want to have a visualization of the evolution of the carrier frequencies of each event, I just select this, and you can see the global evolution of these elements according to that parameter. So now one very important aspect for today is that instead of coloring, I go back to the just polyphonic order, which is the simplest one. Instead of coloring these elements according to their spatial position, you can color them according to events. So that's first level of articulation of Chowning's process. So each event is in fact a set of elements, and that is the result of an algorithmic process that I will come back in a couple of videos. Yeah, so there are a couple of interesting aspects for maybe understanding a bit better the structure of the work. Like for instance, I can turn off modulation. Now you only hear the carrier frequency so that you can focus on the fundamental pitch of each element. So I'm putting them back, but you can also switch off the reverberation, which is a good way to notice how much the simple fact of adding at that time quite elaborated reverberation was crucial to make this basic synthesis. Really, I mean, at that time it wasn't that basic, but for almost all of us today it's quite basic anyway. How much reverberation is important to make this sound actually lively as it is in the final work. So I will stop here today, but I encourage you to download this anyway when it's ready, or I can provide it to you if you come and see me later today. Of course, in 20 or 25 minutes, it's still a bit frustrating to have to explain things rather quickly, but I can tell you after a lot of tests that it's a wonderful pleasure to spend hours exploring things under this software. So, as you could maybe see here on the left, you've got a scrolling bar, so that enables users to navigate between what we call interactive role examples or videos. So a bit later I will show John talk about his own creative process, but for now I will just show the evolution of these examples together. So after seeing the work as a whole, it's important to have a clear knowledge, in fact, of what frequency modulation is, especially as it is the very fundamental process used in that work. So here you've got a very didactic, pedagogical example of frequency modulation. So I'll just play a 200 Hz frequency, and if if I now consider that I've got here in red modulator frequency, and that I increase the modulation index, that's something that you all know, but here you can visualize the partials as they are here. Like that. So, in terms of the spectral and the work on timbre in general in Stria, what John did, in fact, what John wanted is to have a very rich spectrum. But if I use this, which is just one modulator plugged into one carrier frequency, I have to have quite a high modulation index. I'm just increasing the scaling here, but if I want many partials, I need to have a very high modulation index. So the synthesis instrument in Stria was in fact two parallel modulators feeding one carrier frequency. So here you've got the same example really, but with two modulators and two modulation index controls. So here both my modulation indices are below 1, but still I've got a rich spectrum. Then if you want to go further, again I won't do that now, but you can display the matrix of frequencies generated by this process. Right. Now, another important aspect, still within the context of simple frequency modulation, of more complex frequency modulation, is that what I just demonstrated is static. But of course, John and in general pioneers of digital music discovered very early on that the key thing was to make this partial evolution evolve in time. So in Stria and in many other works, many parameters such as the modulation index, the overall amplitude, the frequencies themselves were all driven by envelopes. So for instance here I can just demonstrate this as such. Again, here the idea is that we make sure that our users understand as much as possible the basics of frequency modulation. Right. So, in the context of Stria, what John was using as actual parameters for the synthesis itself are the parameters that you got on the screen. So maybe you cannot see them so well here, but they are divided into time parameters, so duration, attack time, decay time. It's not exactly the main amplitude, the attack and decay times, but it's more about the general evolution of the element. Then frequency parameters are just one carrier frequency, modulator A and B frequencies, and then Q, which is a factor by which all these frequencies increase and slightly decrease over time in a very subtle way, but just to add a little bit of liveliness on events and on blended elements together. Modulation parameters, so initial modulation index for modulator A, final modulation index, and so on. Then spatialization over 4 channels, so front, left, front, right, and rear, left, rear, right. And then just the choice of tables, which are these functions that you see here that shape the evolutions of parameters. Okay, so before moving on to the actual compositional process of John's, I play, I think, sorry, Thorsten, I did not check the time, but I think I've got quite a lot of time left. So I'll just let John talk about his own approach of programming.
expertise in programming Max was evolving. And when we were looking at the sale code, talking to you about that, you were saying that you didn't like to go back over something after you'd developed it and tidy it up and clean it up. You liked it in a way to be a trace of the progress that you'd been making in your creative thinking. If you say a bit more about the reasoning behind that.
Yes. So, when I look at the sale code or even the Maximus P code, and think about these being published or becoming available, some of the people looked at this suggested that, well, maybe you would want to clean up the code and make it a little more elegant and professional. And my response to this is not. I don't want to do that, because when I look at the voices patches, the ones that I did early on, and I see that I kind of created what actually was available as an object. I didn't know about the object. When I look at that, I think about the process that I was going through at the time, so that reflects kind of the state of very often sort of a creative high, where I feel like empowered, like, okay, I've done this, it does what I want. And, now if I replace that by a UZ object or something, all those feelings disappear. And that trace on the process of imagining and creating is eliminated. And so with the sale code, there are places where I have an explode something to a power, then to a power. And I knew that if I just summed those two together, I'd have the same result. But if you put those two together, then even then in the composition, it eliminated the opportunity to back out, to go back to the previous state, because going through the complexity of all this, if I look at it again and I just see a single exponent rather than the combined, then I can't remember what the previous state was. So if I want to go back to zero, like Control Z, with going back. And this idea of having the code reflect the actual process, what goes through, was very important to me.
Great, so I found this excerpt nice also in the context of this reconstruction process, because it's true that when you look at the code, which is publicly available in the Computer Music Journal issue, there are some odd things for programmers, like what John just mentioned, like having something to the power of, to the power of, to the power of, when you could obviously refactor this in a much more efficient way, especially back there. There is this quite strong will to have, maybe to the detriment of elegancy of coding, this will to keep things traceable in a way. So in total in this software, as in all our case studies, we've got quite a lot of material, so there are many aspects that are mentioned. You see I cannot go through them today, but we've got over 1 hour and a half in that case, over 1 hour and a half of video materials on which John discusses both aesthetical and technical aspects of his work as a whole, especially in Stria, but a bit beyond as well. So now I will move on towards an example that is initially blank, because John was working on a terminal on which he was inputting not synthesis parameters as such, but algorithmic parameters that were supposed to generate one of these events that you saw as colored entities earlier. And the idea here is that we can just focus step after step on the visualization of the consequences of one given algorithmic parameter. So So the first thing that you must, I mean, if you were to in situation in the position to really write Stria yourselves, you would first have to define a global duration for your element, for your event. So again, an event is made of several elements. So here you can see a global frame that is showing simply the duration of the event. So here at the left of the screen, I've got the input parameter corresponding to this. So here it's 55 seconds, but of course I can increase it or reduce it. So I leave it to that value. And within that duration, within that global duration, is an attack time. That is the duration within which elements will start. According to another parameter that will set the actual starting positions for each element within that attack time. So here we've got 10 elements starting exactly on the red lines. So that's pretty much it for time parameters. But here I've got an element duration factor that will directly impact the duration of this element. So at the moment, if I tweak this, you cannot see anything change, but if I move towards the next step, you can see in a quite pale gray here the actual durations of this element. So now, if I move this attack duration downwards, elements will tend to start within a shorter duration. And if I tweak this element duration factor, well, the formula is a bit, I mean, it's very complicated, but I cannot mention it off the top of my head. But with this visualization, I can see the effect of the possibilities that John had at that time, right? Okay. So now the next step is to talk about pitch-related characteristics. So what was basically set up was first to set a basis frequency, that is a global frequency for the whole, that will drive the scaling and frequencies for the whole event. So here it's 2,618 Hertz, and it's not random value, it's in fact 1,000 Hertz, which is an arbitrary value that John chose as a basis frequency for the whole composition process, times 1.618 to the power of 2, 1.6118 being the golden ratio. So that was crucial in all aspects of the composition of Stria. So now what happens is that from that basis frequency you make a grid that is made up of either 9 pseudotones or 18 pseudo-semitones, but the scaling is not made according to the octave that we generally know, but according to these golden ratios, basically. So here, for instance, you've got this grid that is set up in such a way that all elements will be having their carrier frequency exactly on that golden number grid frequency. The golden number frequency grid, sorry. So again, here I can move to the left side of the screen and tweak these parameters. For instance, if I just tweak this base frequency downwards or upwards, the golden ratio values are still the the same, that the basis frequency moves. But I can also define the frequency space, what is called the frequency space, by changing a power value. So here I extend it downwards, but I can also have positive powers to extend it upwards and square. So I've been talking in a quite abstract way until now, but at any point of this example, you can just sit down and listen to what you did, right? So maybe a better thing to do here would be to move towards the next step and place these elements that are set on this grid according to an incremental navigation in a table that contains fixed values that basically are indices within the actual frequency values. Event of Stria, but then I tweaked parameters in such a way that, of course, it's not exactly the same, but I've got presets that enable me to set the parameters of each of the events of Stria. So I'll move forwards now quickly because I only have 5 minutes left, but then you've got a bandwidth that is here only symbolic, but that corresponds to the modulation indices and the modulating frequencies used for the elements. And then you've got this attack and decay times represented, and then you've got the spatial and spatialization coloring that corresponds to what you saw earlier. And this as well is set algorithmically in such a way that if you had, for instance, more elements, you would see very clearly, and we would increase this number of elements to say 100. And as you can probably see, there's a whole cycle from red towards blue towards red again, which means that basically within one event, each element is spatialized across the full circle of the polyphony diffusion. Right, so here you can just step through all events of Stria. And both listen to the event on its own as it is, and also feel free to, again, tweak these input parameters to see what results from a given set of input parameters. And you can also display a synthesis parameter panel so that you can investigate the synthesis parameters of one given element. So here, for instance, I know that this object, this element I clicked on, is a carrier frequency of 618 Hertz, and you can also tweak this parameter itself if you feel like escaping a bit from this very rigid algorithm. I mean, rigid in the sense that once one event was generated, it was not then changed at all. Right, and the last example is exactly the same, except that you've got a nice terminal emulation, so you can put the parameters that I just very briefly described earlier, but according to the terminal interface that John had. So, I mean, it may seem a bit anecdotal, but in fact, I find that there is a nice thing about trying it totally blindly and just wait. I can go through it very quickly, but you've got to type all these values values basically for each event. And when you're done, you can listen to the event, but there's something about getting a clear idea of the input process of John's composition. Right, so I hope that this gives you an idea of John's creative process for Stria. So obviously I encourage you to try it out and just spend time on it, because there's quite a lot to investigate in this program. Okay, so thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? Yeah, perhaps then I just start with something. There's not a question, it's a comment. Considering what he did in Sale is one thing. Considering what he did in Max, I'm also amazed by that. How do you avoid getting those depth of subcultures? Do you actually have? I mean, is this all a visual program?
That's all. That's batch, max batch, but there's a lot of. I mean, the visuals are in JavaScript, so that's anyway. So that's a lot of this. And not to get lost, I made a nice batch visualizer that enables me to have a visualization of the batch, but that's a bit of talking for one.
So the final version of every one of our case studies will be an application compiled, so you don't have to own Max or anything. It will be standalone, and so you can use it without needing to own Max or be a Max program. The interface is designed to be user-friendly as far as we can make it, without obviously complicated data we want to get across there, but we try to make it as user-friendly as we can.
Just as a follow-up regarding Stria, in fact, the algorithmic code was written in this same language that does not exist anymore, but now it's in JavaScript. In fact, it works. It works in the same way. Yeah.
Question. It's a technical question regarding the colors that you're using. It was going from blue to red, purple. Will they be the same color throughout the pieces from John Chowning or or will it be different colors representing different things, or is it going to be a legend?
Yeah, well, it will be made clear on the user manual in the book, but no, it's different from case to case, because according to each case we decide to focus on different aspects. And for instance, here, you know, we could color things according to any parameter if we wanted to, but to have a first global view, we felt that coloring according to the spatialization was probably an thing that's not easy to get the first feel of it immediately. While for the DOM case, we color things according to categories, acousmatic categories in a way. So yeah, so it differs from case to case. We try to remain consistent as much as possible, but there are so many specificities that we cannot have a kind of identical thing for everyone.
I have another for Michael. This will eventually be a tool to teach the young generation. Is this like the purpose to teach it to the young composer, or?
I think it's got many different potential uses. As I said, just as someone might write a musical analysis of a Beethoven symphony or something, this would be our equivalent of this, and that might be read by fellow academics, by postgraduates, by students, and so on. We just feel that a book on its own is now an outdated mode of communicating, particularly when you're talking about computer music. So this is a way of communicating a study of a work. At the same time, having said that, there are, I think, many different uses for it. We've had one or two people who've attended our presentations who are composers saying, oh, I'd like to use this software to compose myself. When we presented by Truax's River Run, and we had a simulation of his granular synthesis method, GSX, Barry himself actually was saying, I'd like to use this myself. So it can be used as a compositional tool. I don't think Liz is here now. Liz was here earlier. You know, she suggested we might use it in the courses here or elsewhere to teach, say, first-year composition students how they can use a technique, or how another composer used a technique in a particular compositional way, but then adapt it and learn about composition through that. So hopefully it's flexible and multidimensional. People could use it in very different ways. And once it's all finished, which hopefully will be very soon, that'll be one of these we want to explore with different people in different places and what they want to do.
So instead of doing, say, Renaissance composition in the classroom,
well, possibly, yes, pastiche, charming, but not stepping stones to. I think often we teach techniques of electroacoustic composition or whatever, computer music, and we don't relate that to the repertoire. One of the things I hope this can do is to relate musicological study of the repertoire with analytical study, with synthesis techniques, and with creative work, and bring all those things together in some way. That would be my ideal. That's quite a big challenge, but hopefully it's a stepping stone to help do that.
I would love to hear the Xenakis electroacoustic pieces treated this way, and see what that looks like and go through this process. I'm sure everybody has a list of favorites. We would all be constrained by the availability of the generated code for some symbolic representation until analysis tools get much more advanced than what we have now. So I'm sure you've thought about this. How big a list of other electroacoustic pieces do you think exist that could be treated this way if you had unlimited amounts of time?
It would be very big. But it's a good one. In fact, we have considered a lot of composers before making this selection, but then we haven't investigated the availability of any source for any other composer yet. So if I had to just mention compose now, I could probably mention 5 or 10 that I've got in mind, just potentially there are hundreds of possibilities.
We chose what we hoped is a reasonably wide range of different approaches and different styles. Obviously, with only 8 works, we're not going to be fully representative. And we did take some account of the feasibility, although to a large extent we explored that after we made our initial selection. We haven't since had to reject any piece because we couldn't find materials. We've been lucky that resources have been available, both sound files in many cases, not all. I mean, Francis Domon, probably the one that's most difficult, but all the composers, including Francis himself, have been extraordinarily helpful to us, which is another factor. And of course, as time moves on, the access to those people for the older pieces may not be so easy. Sadly, one of our composers died before we started the project, Jonathan Harvey, although I'd already worked on some of his earlier music and I'd actually spent quite a long time talking to him about this idea of doing his 4th string quartet. So we have had contact with him, but sadly we can't go back to him now and get more information. But yes, certainly, I think as time goes on, take another example of the Domon. We've been, Frédéric has been recreating the GRM CTAR. In fact, we're in discussions with GRM now about making a fuller model of that as a separate project. But we were able to recreate that with help from people at GRM and documentation. But there isn't actually an extent version of it working, although we're hoping we might be able to resurrect one of the old machines if we go ahead with this other project. But as time goes on, there'll be less of the equipment available, less of the people around, so for the earlier repertoire it will get more and more difficult, and so we did feel it was quite urgent to do some of this. So it's a long list, I think, at the moment. New things will add to the list that come along, but at the bottom end, then the old pieces may become more difficult to do as time goes on. Perhaps I could just add to that. I mean, we think we want to move, having finished this, we want to move on to probably some other projects we've got in mind and other things, but we still think it's very important. We have had a sort of general idea that maybe for a second volume of this work, we might see if there are other people out there, which might be some of you, who would be interested in taking on some of this with benefiting from some of the experience and the algorithms and programming that we've done. So it's just an idea that's in the back of our minds there. We might sort of go out and say, anybody want to do some more of these pieces? We'll give you a hand as best we can, rather than actually doing them all ourselves.
The University of Huddersfield, inspiring tomorrow's professionals.